What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today's video we're going to be talking about how one cheat provider has managed to make wall hacks look like Combat Scout. This could be a big issue moving forward if they can advance that even further so that it only shows up at certain times and actually looks just like Combat Scout. Although I'm sure a lot of you guys realised when they introduced Combat Scout as a perk into Warzone that it could quite lead to some problems when it comes to trying to detect if somebody is cheating. Now imagine somebody's running Combat Scout but also running these cheats that look identical to Combat Scout. We're going to showcase some of that today. We're going to do a comparison of Combat Scout and these cheats as well, so you guys can see how clear it is that they are pretty much identical. If you do enjoy the video, guys, be sure to hit that thumbs up. If you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos. And don't forget, guys, to follow me on Twitter at badboybeaman if you want to stay in touch and up to date. Right, let's crack on with the video. So this right here is a video that's been posted by a cheat provider and it's showcasing their new features, right? And in the new features, you have something that looks identical to Combat Scout. I would say the colour is slightly off, but that doesn't mean that it can't be changed. It actually showcases in this video that they can change the colour to whatever they please. Pink, purple, blue, green, red, it doesn't matter. But you could make these cheats look identical to Combat Scout. Other than the player box and the player health that you can see here, which are different features by the way, if you were to take those away, it would look right now just like Combat Scout shooting an enemy through the door, right? Now, although there's probably a lot of questions circulating as to whether or not somebody could pull this off on stream, they probably couldn't, because let's face it, Combat Scout only appears when you shoot an enemy, right? If you land some bullet or cause damage to an enemy based on different weapons as well, throwables and stuff like that, it makes the enemies visible through objects, anything like that. But this would have it on all the time. But this could just be the start. This could be the start, and they could actually incorporate it so that they flash up. Every time your Combat Scout hits, this flashes up and shows other people. And then that could raise questions to a streamer, but this is not a feature I don't think that a streamer would use. What I'm trying to point out is that the cheat developers are constantly progressing. They're constantly trying to find ways to make their cheats less detectable or more stream proof. Is this something that's going to be more stream proof? Probably not, but it is still something that they've been able to develop for their cheats that looks like a perk from the game. When Activision thought it would be a great idea to incorporate something that is pretty much wall hacks into the game as a perk, it was always going to be a bad idea. Combat Scout is wall hacks. You are able to see an enemy through walls, through objects. That is exactly how wall hacks work. And at the time that they incorporated Combat Scout into the game, it felt like a real bad time for cheaters in the game. A lot of people using wall hacks, a lot of streamers being accused of wall hacks, and many other players getting reported for wall hacks. And then Activision incorporated Combat Scout, and it felt like it was a cover-up attempt. I'm not saying it was. It felt like it though. They incorporated something that allows the player to see an enemy through a wall and to continue shooting and tracking that enemy through a wall or object. So then what you once would have thought was wall hacks, you could be like, oh, he must be running Combat Scout, right? Big cover up, probably, maybe not. But that's how it felt. And now you've got the cheat developers making their wall hacks look identical to Combat Scout. All you gotta do is take away the player health and the player box, and right there you would tell me that I was delusional in thinking that that was wall hacks. You would tell me that that right there is Combat Scout, but it's not. So let's take a look at a video from jgod that he put out 7 months ago where he was explaining about the new perk Combat Scout. So I'm going to run a clip of jgod explaining how Combat Scout works as well, and this is for anybody who's never used that perk, and if you haven't, then I suggest that you do while it's in the game. But I do think it's something that needs nerfing or removing from the game personally, because it is literally built in wall hacks. Let's take a listen to what jgod had to say on it when it was first incorporated into Warzone.
Now let's go ahead and talk about how Combat Scout works and if that is the new meta when it comes to the perk 3 slot. There were a couple different things that I assumed about the perk that I eventually ended up being wrong, and other things that I learned about the perk that we'll go ahead and discuss. So pretty much how it works is you get a basic highlight, and you're able to see people just the same way it looks when you get a snapshot grenade. And pretty much how it works is you take damage and you can see the character on screen highlights, and this is behind cover. They'll highlight for 600 milliseconds for all damage except for some reason Semtex. You get 667 milliseconds. So 10% longer with those for whatever reason. And the timer resets 600 milliseconds every time the player takes damage. So you shoot and then another bullet hits them 100 milliseconds later, it's 600 milliseconds from the last time you deal damage. That's how that particular one works. And we can go through and it goes all the way across. But this thing actually has multiple components. So you can see it turns off right at 600 milliseconds, which is this frame right there. The other part of this is there's also a ping that stays above the player's head, like a live ping. And this one lasts for 3.5 seconds and it does not reset until the 3.5 seconds are up. So what I mean by that is, let's say I damage him here.
So you can hear jgod 7 months ago explaining how Combat Scout works, in the sense of players being visible through objects after you've dealt damage, but he does also go on to say that there is a live ping above the enemy's head, which is right. And that would be the way in which you could tell the difference between somebody running the wall hacks that look like Combat Scout and somebody actually running Combat Scout. But if these guys are clever, they would honestly be running Combat Scout as well as the wall hacks that they've got, and it wouldn't make a difference. But what I will say at this point is that I don't believe the new features of this specific cheat provider are going to be something that you will see a streamer using. Not yet. But I do think this is the start of something. I do believe that they're going to start trying to replicate certain perks in the game. They've already done it with aim assist. The whole Call of Duty community has been manipulated into believing that aim assist does things that it doesn't do. Aim assist lock, aim assist drag. I mean, yes, you can get aim assist drag if the player is literally right on top of you, but to get aim assist drag on a player 50 meters away or 100 meters away, it's just not doable. But hey, a lot of you guys will disagree with me because you've been watching a lot of streamers using something that you didn't know they were using, and they will never tell you that they were using. And this is what I'm talking about. The cheat developers have been able to replicate a stronger aim assist by allowing their users to change things, change settings, smoothness, speed, where it locks to, whether it moves around the player box, and it's all still aimbot. But this is something that they're still progressing on. Cheat developers are constantly progressing their cheats. So 10 years ago, if you'd have asked somebody about aimbot, they would have said, oh, it's headshot only and it kills everyone every time you shoot, right? But now you can literally hit somebody in the elbow, you can lock onto the foot, the knee, the neck, the torso, the head, and you can actually free roam inside the player box. You can also scan from one location to another. There are so many different features for aimbot. And now we're talking about wall hacks. There have always been different features. There's been player skeleton, player box, player health bar, and not to mention player name, what weapons they've got, what position they're in, 2D player box, 3D player box. There are so many features, but now what you have is them trying to replicate Combat Scout. And this is a perk in the game that Activision thought would be great to incorporate. Now, although I would say the perk is very good for casual players, I do believe that this is actually taken away about 80% suspicion of people using wall hacks. And I'll tell you now, if I was running wall hacks in the game, I most certainly would have Combat Scout on as a perk. Because let's face it, if you see an enemy through a wall, all you've got to do is shoot them and then they're highlighted. And if your wall hacks are stream proof and your stream can't see them, then guess what? Everybody's just going to think that the only reason you knew that enemy was there was because you've got Combat Scout on. But now they're trying to make their cheats look like Combat Scout. So even if your cheats were to slip up and show on stream, you could just say it was Combat Scout. Whether or not your viewers will believe you, well, I mean, it's been shown in the past that a lot of viewers can be manipulated by their favourite streamers, so it's a possibility. What we're going to do now, we're going to go back and watch some of the footage from this new feature from this cheat provider. And the reason we're going to show you this is because I don't want you to just think that they've replicated Combat Scout perfectly, because they haven't. You are actually able to change the colours of these cheats to whatever you want. But I'm just pointing out that you can make this look identical to Combat Scout. Okay, so we're just going to run this through. It's not a very long video, but it's showcasing their cheats in use. And you can see how the colour they've chosen looks like Combat Scout. But they can change the colour throughout. And yes, there is player box, player health bar, and so on. And you can see the player name or distance, I believe it is. The distance, yeah. But it looks just like Combat Scout when it's that colour. And I'm sure they could adjust it to make it look identical to Combat Scout based on the colour. But as you can see here, they're showcasing that the colours can be changed. So it's not perfectly designed to replicate Combat Scout, but it is definitely able to happen. and it's still a negative thing. So one thing I will say is this: I do believe the cheat developers are very intelligent people. The way in which they can create these cheats for the game and constantly progress their cheats, the way in which they can always stay miles ahead of the game developers, I think it's fantastic. But at the same time, it's ruining the gaming industry. It's actually ruining what a casual player once deemed to be fun. You would go home, kick your feet up and play a few games with your friends and have fun. But that has stopped. Call of Duty has come to a halt because of the cheating problem, and the cheat developers are the only ones really progressing in the game. It's going to turn out to be another CSGO if it isn't already there yet. But the issue I have with this today is the fact that they were able to do something to their cheats that can replicate a perk in the game. Now, although this probably can't be used by streamers because it would be extremely noticeable that your combat scout is just running all the time, right? But it is still something that shows that the perk they've incorporated into the game, Activision that is, it shouldn't be there. If this is something that can be replicated with wall hacks, it shouldn't be in the game. And I think that they really need to take a hard look at themselves and remove Combat Scout from Call of Duty Warzone, because it is definitely a feature in the game that is making it a hell of a lot harder to detect people using wall hacks, which makes a wall hacker's life a hell of a lot easier, and that is something that I can't get behind. Well, there we have it, guys. You've got Combat Scout and now these new wall hacks that look pretty much identical. If you just take away the player box and player health on that clip we've shown today, it looks identical to Combat Scout. Although I would state that Combat Scout is a hell of a lot more visible through the walls compared to those cheats. But what you have to remember is these cheat developers are constantly working on progression. They are constantly making their cheats harder to detect, better for the user. The cheat developers seem to always be 10 steps ahead of the game developers. They are constantly making changes, constantly trying to progress, constantly trying to make their cheats as undetectable as possible and easier for streamers to use. And it doesn't matter how stream proof these cheats are, at some point when you buy publicly available cheap cheats, they probably will get detected at some point and it will lead to a ban. So stay away. Guys, we are 2 years into Warzone and there are still people cheating, and the cheat developers are still making changes to their cheats, which means that they still have a large customer base. Because let's face it, if they didn't, would they really be bothered to be making so many changes to their cheats? Probably not. So to finish off today, I actually want to give a shout out to Goon Squad. They've actually put a video out, although it's been over a year since this beef between myself and zlaner. It's finally good to see somebody actually pointing out the manipulation and narcissism from zlaner. This is something that I tried to explain months back, probably about 9 or 10 months ago. And my viewers, you guys, understood. But the majority of the Call of Duty scene just ate up the stories that zlaner stated. I'm gonna link Goon Squad's video in the description below because they have gone through and broken down one of zlaner's response videos to me. And the way in which they've done that is actually brilliant. They've showed that zlaner has manipulated everyone who believes him. Honestly, go and check it out, it's in the description below. But guys, if you did enjoy today's video, be sure to hit that thumbs up if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos. If you want to support the channel further, hit that blue join button today and become a member of the Triple B fam. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at badboybeaman. Until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side. Peace!